Love your life when you do this. Hey, my dear, I am leadership development coach Kathy Archer and author of best-selling book, Mastering Confidence. Today, we are talking about how you can love your days more, because many women don't love their days. They get to the end of their day and they're a little bit frustrated with how their day went. I know that because when I coach women and when I train women, and my own experience of leadership was like that very much. And I think there's a point in time when many women leaders find that they are in over their heads and struggling with the workload and the work responsibilities and wondering if they have what it takes to lead. I know, because I was there once too. In my coaching and my training, in the courses that I offer online, I teach women both the inner and outer tools to restore that lost confidence so they can move from survival mode to thriving in both leadership and life. So that's what we're talking about today, is how do you develop some of those tools and skills so that you can love your days more. While we are getting started here and people are joining us online, I'm going to go over and share this in my Confident Women Leaders group. If you are watching and waiting for me to share this, I want to know in the chat box, on a scale of 1 to 10, or maybe a percentage, how much do you love your days? You know, is it like 10%? Is it 20%? How much of your days can you go, yeah, I really enjoyed that day. I really loved that day. Just put a number in the comment box while I'm posting this to the Confident Women Leaders group. Thinking it's going, posting, done. See, here's what happens for many women, and I have some notes here I was going to read. These are the comments that I get from women when they come to coaching. They're anxious, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're scattered, they're irritable, they're frazzled. Sound familiar? Every time I get on a call with a woman, or not every time, because as they start to make some of those inner and outer changes, this changes. But when we start coaching, the first few calls, this is exactly what they're feeling. You know, when people come to training, they are overwhelmed. They're struggling to get everything done. And here's what happens when you are in that place. We don't get done what matters most. And what I hear from most women, and give me a thumbs up if you'll agree with this, what I hear from most women is, what matters most at work is time with their employees. They're so focused on the tasks and the meetings and the appointments and the emails and the reports and the budgets. And what they really want to do at work is just have some conversations with their staff. Not scheduled always, stiff conversations where we're talking about this, but a conversation with, hey, how are you doing? And that's often what leaders miss, is that one-to-one connection where they're building relationships with their employees. That's what often matters most, and that's often what gets pushed to the side. I have one lady in particular, I know she writes in her day timer, it's part of her sort of task that she wants to get to. I want to spend time with this employee. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It might be writing a little note to them or something, but that's often what gets missed. What gets missed in the rest of their life is time with their kids, time with their spouse, time with their loved ones. You know, they're so exhausted at the end of the day that they don't have time for that, or they don't have the energy for that. And they end up flopping on the couch or scrolling through Facebook, binging on Netflix, having a glass of wine, because they're so still frazzled that they don't actually have the space in their energy to kind of spend that time with their kids or their husband or their dog. The third thing that they don't have time for is themselves. They really, truly want to go for that massage, spend a few minutes just relaxing, doing some yoga, reading a book, going for a walk. Give me a thumbs up if that's one of the things that you really, really want more time for. And what we tend to do in our days is we get so caught up with what's going on that we often have we kind of think of as tunnel vision, but it's actually tunnel attention. It's called cognitive tunneling. And our brains are focused on really the things that are in front of us. And it's because we are in that stress mode. So if you were a primitive person back in the day and, you're just wandering around your tent, doing your thing, and all of a sudden your spidey senses tingled and you felt that presence of something, your focus would narrow right into the sounds that were going on, to the branches breaking, to the shadows, because you would be so focused on staying alive. It's survival mode. And when we're in that survival mode, our body chemistry changes and our focus changes. We get into that fight or flight mode, and we can only focus on what's in front of us. And so for us, there is no wild animal coming to chase us, but there is fires, there is drama, there is the demands of our time, there is the conflicts, there is the insistent person standing at our door. And we tend to only focus on what's in front of us. And that's cognitive tunneling. Have you ever had that? Have you ever kind of not sort of stepped back and went, oh, I haven't ate lunch yet? Or, man, I really meant to go talk to Cindy today. Or, there's some other things that aren't, fires and emergencies, but that I really do need to focus on. They're important things. They're not crisis things. They are not going to fall apart today if I don't deal with them. But in the long term, they're really important. And so that's what we do when we get into this cognitive tunneling, is we only focus on what's in front of us. And it's hard to love your day when you're focused on drama and fires and conflict and emergencies. And what happens in our body is we just get wound up tighter and tighter and tighter, and we feel frazzled. And I had one lady say to me the other day, I just feel like I haven't stopped all day. Like it's go, 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 go. I constantly feel on. I feel the pressure constantly. We hold on to that pressure in our shoulders and our neck, and we get tension headaches, and our bodies, our stomachs are tight because we haven't settled down. We are constantly in stress mode. That survival place, right? I'm just, trying to do everything I need to do to survive. It's not a fun way to live. It's not a fun way to lead. The people around you feel like you don't really have time for them. The people around you feel like the only thing they can bring to you is a crisis, or you're not going to pay attention. And they sort of want a more calmer you, a more present you. And because we spend much of our days in survival mode, that's not who we are. So how do we get out of that? How do we shift? How do we learn to love our days more, get out of that fight or flight response, and start to feel more connected and present in our days? How do we do that? It's by creating mental models. It's by doing planning in our head and planning on paper, so that we are building a plan of how we're going to go through our days. When we build a mental model, and we do this all the time, what I'm suggesting you do is do it more consciously, more deliberately, and take time to do it. When we have a mental model, I'm going to go into the store and I'm going to get milk, and I'm going to get bread, and I'm going to get some lemons, and I'm going to head to the till, and I'm going to be back to my vehicle. That's a mental model. When I do that, and the sales thing is bleeping over here and saying, come look at me, and there's all of these other distractions, that mental model helps keep me focused. No, I'm not going to check out the chocolate. No, I'm not checking out the ice cream. I know that I'm going for milk, bread, lemons, and I'm hitting the till. That's what we need to create in our days. That mental model helps us go, I'm coming to the office, and I know that people are going to be anxious and really demand my time, but I'm going to set some boundaries. I'm going to spend a few minutes doing this. At 11 o'clock, I'm going to go and get up, because I'll know by 11 o'clock I've been sitting too much, and I'm going to go check in with Cindy, because that's something that I really want to do today. And when we create that mental model, it helps us deflect some of that stuff that's coming at us all day, because we are constantly bombarded with urgent requests from other people, emergencies, crisis, demands that aren't really as critical as one might think. Some of them are really important, but some of the other stuff is really important too. And when you create a mental model, you start to notice those emergencies and you say, yeah, and I can deal with that at 11:30 because the world won't fall apart in a half hour. But I really do need to talk to Cindy first. I really do need to connect with her. I've noticed lately that she's been a little bit off. That crisis can happen and I can respond to it at 11:30. That's that mental model that walks you through that. So what I want you to do is start to look at how can I create those mental models more deliberately? How can I plan my day, plan for emergencies and crises, and plan to not react to them all the time, but respond to them? Because when we get out of reacting is when we take back that control of our days, when we start to feel less of a victim and more response able, and we start to go, your crisis isn't my crisis. Your emergency doesn't have to become my emergency. And so when somebody's saying to you, I need this information now, what you can turn it around is and say, yeah, okay, I hear that you need that information. You know, maybe they're looking for some of the data for their annual report, or they're doing a proposal and they need you to put this piece into it, or somebody needs you to answer this question so that they can move on. You can turn it around and say, I will get to you in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour or in 2 days. Or you can say, when is it that you absolutely need that by? Like, when is your last deadline? Because then it helps you prioritize in your head, okay, that's their emergency for 3 o'clock this afternoon. That still gives you 2 or 3 hours to look at, so what are the priorities I want to put in here? What are the things that I want to make sure get done today? Like talking to Cindy, going for a walk, eating lunch, getting through 3 or 4 emails that you really wanted to respond to. Those things that maybe don't sort of seem as hot or as on fire as everything else, but you really know matter. Because remember, that's what we're talking about. If you want to get to the end of your day and feel like this was a good day, feel like I kind of had some parts where I loved it, where I felt productive, where I felt engaged, where I felt like I did what matters most, you have to plan that in. If you don't plan it in, the chance of it happening is slim to none. So think about how you can add more planning to your days. That might be on the drive to work, just starting to think about consciously, because we do this all the time, but much of what we're doing in our head is regurgitating and unconsciously kind of running through what's going to happen. Slow it down. Be more deliberate about it. When you're driving, when you get to the office, maybe you do this before you leave home, but a 5 or 10 minute kind of, maybe it's a 2 or 3 minute opportunity for you to go, this is how my day is going to go. This is how I want it to go. I know that this is going to happen and it's going to potentially knock me off kilter. This is somebody else's emergency that's going to come in. How am I going to respond to that? Choose your response an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 ahead of time. Helps you when you get to that moment when maybe your energy's lower, your drive isn't quite there, where you've lost a little bit of focus. That mental model is going to help you stay out of cognitive tunneling. Oh my God, there's emergency. I have to respond to it now. To wait a minute. This isn't quite the emergency that they think it is for me. How do I want to choose to respond to it? Any questions, ask me. I will fill in the blanks because I know sometimes it's hard to think about different ways of going through our days. As much as we know we need to do stuff, we do get caught up in the momentum of it. And when we get caught up in the momentum of it, that's when we tend to fall back into that survival mode. It's when we consciously steer our way through it. It's not that we're not, it's not that we're resisting everything and, putting our heels down and saying, I hate this. It's that we're going, oh, okay, this is a busy day. How do I steer my way and navigate my way through it rather than feeling just the irritation all day, the frustration about what's there? So if you want some help planning your days, on January 30th in the training room, we are doing a session called Designing Your Ideal Day. And what I want to do there is help you to sort of take a step back and look at what's most important to me. Where am I at? Perhaps you're really working in this next quarter on a proposal or a project or a new program, something that you have to put some real intentional focus to. And at the same time, you don't want to drop the ball on the other things. So what are the 2 or 3 things that you might need to implement in your days to manage both of those, rather than, feeling like the new busy project's going to like suck the life out of you? How do you not forget that other work and those other people that you're responsible for? And so maybe for you, there's 1 or 2 tweaks where you just take Thursday mornings to focus on the other stuff. And the busy kind of crazy work kind of, fills up the rest of your time. But that Thursday mornings, you step back and you look at that and go, what is it that I need to do? Perhaps you are somebody who needs to really look at self-care. Maybe your doctor's told you need to eat healthier. How are you going to make that happen? What's the 1 or 2 tweaks that you need to do? Maybe you're taking some new training or developing some new skills. What are those skills that you want to create and develop? What are those things that you want to do, and how are you going to do that? If you don't consciously plan how you're going to fit that training into your day, you're not going to get it done. So the training room on Tuesday, we are going to do that. We're going to pause your day, because if you don't stop and do this, it'll never happen, just for an hour. For an hour, we are simply going to step back and look at, how do I design my days so that I'm loving it more, that I'm getting done more of what matters most. So that's at silverrivercoaching.com/training room. I think the link is in the side as well, if you want to join me for that. But again, here's the thing. If you want to love your days more, get out of survival mode where you have that cognitive tunneling and you're only focused on emergencies, you have to pause, step back, and do some planning. You have to intentionally, consciously, deliberately create the experience of your day that you want. Part of that is creating that mental model. What do I want my day to look like? How do I want to design my day? What's potentially going to come in and mess that up? And how am I going to deal with that? When you can plan that ahead of time, here's an example. I changed my eating habits a long time ago. I have to consciously plan if I'm going to town for the day, speaking at a training event for the day, going shopping, leaving the house in any way, shape, or form. I have to plan my meals and how I'm going to respond when something happens. So maybe if I'm doing some training, they're bringing lunch in and I have to go, okay, lasagna is not my thing. Typical response when you're doing training is to bring lasagna and buns in, right? I may have to pack a little bit extra so that I can feed myself during that break. I have to pack water. I have to plan ahead. But we do that often with our eating, or when we're taking, here's another example. When you had young children, or if you still have young children, you pack the diaper bag, right? You bring stuff with you to be prepared for emergencies, an extra shirt for the kid in case he throws up. But do you plan your days that well? Every single day, do you sit down and plan how that day is going to go and plan for contingencies? What's plan A? What's plan B if something goes wrong? That's what we're talking about. So if you want some help with that, I've put in the notes the link to all of the guide sheets. So I didn't do a specific guide sheet for today. There are tons of guide sheets that I've already developed. We're at 31 already. There's one on your confidence plan, your competence plan, and your courage plan. So if you want to develop more confidence, you need to become a more competent leader. What are the skills you need to develop? What are the things you need to learn how to do? What are the traits you're developing? And when you start to make that list, often what happens is you're like, yeah. And you start to struggle with that self-doubt. That's where the courage plan comes into place. So those 3 guide sheets are there if that's something you want to look at. There's a ton of other guide sheets. And then, of course, as I said a few minutes ago, on Tuesday in the training room, we are going to look at doing the Design Your Ideal Day. So the link is there as well. When you step back and start to plan and create more deliberately how you want to have your days, That's when you get out of that survival mode, get out of that cognitive tunneling, get out of that, fight or flight mode, and you start to step back and get that wider picture of life, not this tunnel, but this wider picture of what matters most. And if you want to get done what matters most and feel that love in your days again, step back and do your planning. Join me in the training room on Tuesday, silverrivercoaching.com/training room, where we are going to design your ideal day. Go get any of the guide sheets that can help you, but start to pause more. Be intentional. Be clear about what it is you want. If you have any questions, ask me questions. I know that there's still some of you online watching, and I want to support you and help you in any way I can. So if there's a question you have, or if this has been helpful, just give me a like, a thumbs up, so that I know that this is resonating for you and making sense for you. That perhaps you are one of those lady leaders who is feeling a little bit overwhelmed and in over your head and questioning if you have what it takes to lead. Make sure that you step back and gain some of the skills, learn some of the techniques to help you develop the competence to lead, because most of us have never been taught leadership skills. We've been taught the job. We've been given a bunch of people to supervise and a bunch of responsibilities, but we've never really truly been taught how to lead, how to manage people, how to manage relationships, how to manage the stress level of leadership. We haven't been taught that. And so those are skills and traits you can learn yourself. Find some books. Last week or the week before, I had a list in the guide sheets of a bunch of productivity books. A few weeks before that, one of the guide sheets is Leadership Listens, all of the books that I suggest on leadership. So go get some of those. Start to develop your skill base. Start to develop that level of confidence in yourself so that you can handle what's thrown at you. And then you have to have that courage, right? That's just, we start with developing the skills. You can go take training. You can go take the conflict resolution. You can go take a course. But if you don't have the courage then to do it, that's when we start to struggle. So you need to have the competence, the skill base. You need to have the courage to practice that. And that gives you a level of confidence. Hey, Leanna, good to see you on today. I'm reading your question. Simple message that we often need to hear. Take time to, yes. Yeah, exactly. It's the kids example. Sometimes I forget that it's the basics in life that we do, but we don't do. Brendon Burchard, who is one of my people that I follow all the time, and I love his work, he often says, common sense is not common practice. It makes sense to plan our days, but we don't do it, right? It makes sense to stop 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute to go, how's my day going to go? And when that stress level increases, which it does, yesterday I was noticing I've got a ton of things on my plate, and I realized, my shoulders are really starting to get tense, and my neck is starting to feel it, and I'm starting to feel that, that vibrating feeling where I'm like, gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta make sure this is done, and over here and over there, and I'm like, whoa, back up a minute. And so I know, because I've started to do this more and more and more, when that frazzled fight or flight place hits me, when I'm sort of tunneling in on, I got to get this done, I got to get this done, it's actually time to step away. It's time for me to go for a walk, to just, go turn some music on and have a little dance. It's time for me to connect with somebody else and reach out and see what's going on. It's time for me to step away from social media. It's time when I start to feel that jittery feeling, and I know you guys know this. Give me a thumbs up if you feel this. It feels like you just are bouncing, like you're kind of like Tigger. I got to do this. I got to do that. Oh, I might make sure I feel this. And, oh, I got to flip over here. And what you end up doing is like bouncing from one thing to the other and really getting nothing done. When we get to that point, and we can feel it in our bodies sometimes, we really do need to step back and regroup. When we've planned that at the beginning of the day, when we've said, I know there's going to be a point in my day where I start to get agitated and irritated. I know at that point that that's my signal to step back and take a break, to just go have a drink of water, go pee because I haven't gone pee today, roll my shoulders back, whatever it is, that's that reminder. And when we've planned that in our day, more purposely notice that I'm going to hit that point where I'm falling apart. That's the part where I need to step back. So when you're planning this, you can do things like write it down in the morning. I showed a video and I shared it in my newsletter today about how I design my day. I have my weekly list, and then every single day I have 3 things. That's it. If I get those 3 things done, I can end my day and go, man, I felt productive. I feel really good. Maybe I've got 10 things done on my to-do list. But some days I barely get through those 3. And that's what I know at the beginning of the day. Those are the 3 things that I really, truly need to get done today. And what I find is those 3 things aren't necessarily the fires or the emergencies. So today, for example, it was preparing for this Facebook Live, but it's also one thing that I've slid in there that is doing some prep for something I'm doing next week. If I don't get that prep done this week, then I'm going to feel frantic next week. But I know that if I put time in today to do some draft notes on it, that I can take those draft notes next week and feel much better at working through it. Now, in terms of prioritizing, it's easy to say, well, that doesn't happen till next week, so that's bottom of the list for priority. But when I put it bottom of the list of priority, it's going to hang around in my brain as, oh my God, I got to get that done. I got to focus on that. I got to spend, that's coming up. If I don't get that, and it's just going to natter away at my brain and suck part of the brain power away. I'm going to be less productive on the other things. But when I've put it on my to-do list today and spend 20 minutes drafting out sort of the ideas of what I'm going to do with that, that draft next week is gold. It is, the thing that I know can hold me and keep me less frazzled. You can do this with, let's say you're doing staff meetings, and you know that you have staff meeting every sort of Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. That doesn't mean that at Tuesday morning at 8:40 you're drafting your agenda for that staff meeting. You can have a sheet of paper where you kind of throw some things on it as you come up with them. And remember that when you do this more deliberately and consciously and planned, your staff meeting agenda isn't going to be, we have to work on this proposal, and this is the new policy, and these are the things that you guys have been screwing up on, because you're in emergency survival mode. Instead, your agenda is going to look like, we're going to spend 1 minute acknowledging each other and sharing sort of some of the strengths that we've seen, or giving kudos to people on the team. And we're going to, look at on our agenda some of the things that we've neglected for a while. Because when you're more consciously and deliberately planning your agenda ahead of time instead of last minute when you are in survival mode because it's kind of an emergency, when you're more deliberate planning it 2 or 3 or 5 days ahead of time, you're going to be focusing on what matters most. And what matters most is not always the emergencies. It's not always the critical things. It is the things like relationships, managing sort of the culture of the team, looking at the nurturing and caring for the team. Those are the things that matter most, not the policy that needs to be written today, not the things that everybody screwed up on for sure. And so when we're more deliberate and planning, we can step back and get there. Again, I'm still here for you guys. If you have questions, please let me know. If this is resonating, give me a thumbs up. Come join us in the training room on Tuesday, because often what happens is we intend to do this, but we actually don't. We mean it, but we don't actually get there. So come join me in the training room on Tuesday, where we are going to deliberately design your day. You can start to look at what is it that you really want to do, what are the 2 or 3 tweaks that you need to do, and everybody's is different. Everybody's tweaks are different. What you think is sort of loving my day is different than what I think, and different what somebody else thinks. But it's when you start to deliberately look at what's important to me, and put that time into your day, that's when you end your day going, yeah, that was a good day. Loved it, felt good. Yeah, there was some crappy times, no doubt about it. but I feel like I did some of the stuff that really mattered, some of the stuff that I wanted to get done. And so that's what we're looking at. Thank you for watching today, ladies. I know that you might be one of those women leaders who is feeling a little bit overwhelmed, feeling like maybe you're in over your head and struggling with that confidence. I make sure that you guys get those inner and outer tools to turn yourself from that survival mode, restore your lost confidence so you can thrive in both leadership and life. Make sure you head on over to the training room, sign up for Tuesday's lesson on designing your ideal day, and I will see you next week, my dear. Have an awesome day.